Hi all you 12s, I'd like to spend some time talking to you regarding the investigation. Now obviously this information is pretty generic to most of these things, so it's talking about, in the introduction, outlines a problem to be explored, including its significance, its features and the context that you're doing it with, the method that's required to find the solution, the mathematical models you use, the strategies that you actually employ to do that, and then you're going through the next bit. So I know you can read that yourself. If you've got any questions with that, make sure you catch up with me. Just scroll through there. Obviously you've got your performance standards, which looks at what you need to do to try and get an A. Alright, so that's what we're aiming for. And then getting down to the actual problem. So our task here is we're looking at investigating things that don't have necessarily a nice area to measure. So we've got a couple of parts. Now the first part is to do a radial and transverse survey of some area in the school that you need to pave or put some lawn down. Alright, so we're requiring you to go through and do labelled diagrams. I'll be expecting you to do that first bit there for each of the surveys. Alright, so then calculate the area of each of these using, showing quite logical calculations for that, and then determine things like your absolute and relative errors for your measurements. So you'll probably find that you won't get exactly the same measurements, and then you'll need to make some comments about which one you think is more accurate and so on, the sort of things that might go wrong. We'll be using the theodolites for doing the radial survey. So therefore we know, the sort of things that can go wrong with that might be things like the theodolite moves slightly. It's hard to measure exactly the lengths using trundle wheel or measuring tape, so it's hard to get that nice straight line. Obviously things like you could do to improve that would be to use a laser type theodolite, which is quite expensive, that we can't really afford at school, but that's how they do it in reality. Looking at the transverse survey, because you're relying on using right angles, right, it's probably fairly hard to make sure that you get these things at an exact right angle with that. So if you need some help with the surveys and knowing what to do, make sure you talk to me about that. Now the second part of this is the one that I've sort of very quickly mentioned in class, but I actually live on the golf course at McCracken, so this is probably personal to me, and I think it's a really good investigation. What we'd like you to do is find the area and the volume of water in each of the following lakes. Now obviously you don't need to do all of the lakes, but I'd like you to do Lake A, which is our big lake. That feeds most of these lakes. So what happens is that one fills up, and then a lot of these fill up from that. Alright, so now the methods that you can use, alright, you've got some methods. You can use a trapezoidal formula. I'm having trouble saying that. Trapezoidal formula. You've got Simpson's rule. You can use the Pick's rule, the Monte Carlo method, and then there's another one which we haven't done yet, but I will go through, is called the Napier's method. Alright, so there's a couple of techniques that you can actually use, and to show off that you've got those skills and you can do that. So you need to be able to complete the calculations for the volume of the lakes, and what I've done here is giving you the average depth of each of the lakes. So obviously they're deeper than that, but they also they taper off in terms of like a bowl shape. So you can work out the volume of water in there. Now coming down to the last part of this is to look at the lakes being filled with rainwater and stormwater runoff from the nearby suburbs. So you'll need to go to probably the Bureau of Meteorology site and get some information about Victor Harbour's rainfall. Right, so when we get our rain and how much rain we get. If you notice up on the diagram here, I've got a catchment area. So this is the water that will run off, and we'll assume that most of the water will run off. But you can vary things into your investigation. Talk about that possibly all the water wouldn't run off. Some of it would be collected, and some of it would soak into the ground. So you might talk about a percentage of water that will actually run off into the lakes. And then what I'd like you to do is go to Google Earth, and you'll need to go to Google Earth to get your picture of your map anyway.
and get a detail, and you'll better get a scale from that. But you can pick one of the fairways that you'd want to water, and also one of the greens that you need to water, and you can work out how much water that will actually require to keep that actually green during all year round. So keeping in mind you won't need to water that during winter, but you certainly will need to water that through autumn, spring, and obviously summer. Alright, so that's the scope for you to have a bit of flexibility with that. There are obviously tangents you can take for that, so that's a bit of a guide to what you need to better do with your investigation. So as always, think of something different. Try and really show that you can extend your math skills to a higher level than obviously your classmates. So if you've got some ideas, discuss them with me. I'll probably come up with other ideas between now and when it's due, but I think it gives you a bit of an idea to get started. So the key thing is get onto Google Earth. You need to get that big map of A and B. Now I've also shown you very briefly, if you go down on your assignment sheet, I've given you a bit of a sample about how you might want to display that. Alright, so if you've got the one map, you can do cutting and pasting of that map and do all your calculations from that. You can use lines using your insert line, so that's pretty easy by just going into shapes, insert your line there. Right, and then you can just change the colour of that line by just double clicking on it. Oh, don't even need to do that. Coming into that, make it a colour that's going to stand out, and then you can change the thickness of that particular line as well, so it's a little bit easier to actually see it. Alright, once you've got that, then you can change the line around there, and obviously you can use this scale over here to help measure what that might be. Alright, so once you've got them done on the computer, you can print them out and use a ruler to measure those. Well, I hope that helps. Anyway, if you've got questions as you go through, make sure you talk to me about it, and we'll get you through. All right, bye.